I got to believe that apprenticeships offer a tremendous opportunity to go to families that are hungry to escape poverty, hungry to get into the middle class, and say, this is a way that you can start earning right now while working, while learning, and also building your credentials. So I think of it in terms of, I wonder if you could comment on apprenticeships as an upward mobility tool in that context. And can we apprentice everything? Can we have this be as broad-based as a college degree is, where whatever sector you want to go into, you could be an apprentice and that could really help you out?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think of them as an anti-poverty tool as well. They align wages, training, and employment simultaneously. So you're not waiting on that paycheck 4 years from now. I think a lot about our veterans that are coming back, our servicemen and women coming back from service that are, maybe have a kid or two, and they can't wait those 4 years to get that BA behind their name, that they need to get to work right away. And the GI Bill does some of that to help out in apprenticeships, although it actually has a disparity of about $200,000 that it pays more for higher education versus the trades. So, I think we need to move from this idea of like, I need a job to I need a career, and apprenticeships playing a big role in doing so. I think a lot about actually some of the apprentices that I've met over the years. I remember Sean at Ameritech Dye and Mold in just outside of Charlotte. So he's 21 years old. He's getting married. He's not buying his first house. He's buying his second house as a mechatronics apprentice. I mean, compare that to a lot of we asked him like, "Well, how does that compare to like the guys you grew up with?" He's like, "Well, a lot of my friends are on their parents' couch, vaping all day, playing video games, and not getting into the middle class and not forming a family and not getting ahead economically." And I think this is the real win-win-win is employers win on apprenticeships because there's a really terrific ROI for them investing in these young people and adults in apprenticeships. It's a win for our society overall. We see positive ROI for states and for municipalities that invest in apprenticeships. And it's also a win for the young person that needs to get started in a job that can't wait 4 years until they can earn that first paycheck.
Zach, I wanna hone in on this idea of. I love how you describe apprenticeships as an anti-poverty tool, and in fact, your sort of articulation of wages, training, and work kind of all aligned at the same time. That's kind of the holy grail of a program that you would want to deploy to folks either trying to get out of poverty or just starting their adult life and wanting to buy homes and build families and those kinds of things. So I love that framing. And I want to, let me ask you this, let me put it this way. Is there any reason we shouldn't think of this in terms of let's create robust apprenticeships for teaching, for healthcare, expand in the technology sector, maybe in the service industry? I mean, like, can we put literally all industry sectors into this idea of let's figure out how to build apprenticeships? Is there any reason we shouldn't be thinking in those terms?
I don't think so. I mean, I've seen in the work that we did at Urban Institute in building national occupational frameworks that there's interest in this earn and learn model. And what we did was we actually built out the curriculum for 80 different occupations. We found that it was available to do in all nine sectors that we looked at, everything from construction to energy to education to sometimes difficult to fill public service roles that can also be done in an earn and learn model. I think the challenge is we just don't have the policy framework set up, and culturally we have not lifted up this idea that we can really do apprenticeship versus every job requires a bachelor's degree. So we see that there are some policy levers that we could be pulling in terms of we look at a pay for apprentice model where you're leveraging not just what the government puts in. Government puts in a little to get the apprenticeship started, get employers interested in the apprenticeship. Intermediaries support the employers to start those apprenticeships. But in large part, you're leveraging a public private partnership where that company is going to be paying for the lion's share of that apprenticeship. And what a better way to scale economic opportunity than saying the government's not going to do it all. We're gonna depend on the private sector to really invest in the benefit of their people and in their and among their economic future as well.
Zach, in the couple of minutes that we have left, I want to hone in on some kind of public policy maker questions. If we kind of treat this as what kind of advice would you give to policymakers or leaders at the federal level and at the state level if they're hearing this and if folks are hearing this saying, yeah, this sounds great. How do we do it? How do we do it as a state? How do we do it as a nation? And specifically, I want to ask you that because you mentioned this to me before we started to record. There was a recent announcement about kind of shifting around post-secondary and K-12 ed programs at the federal level. Can you talk a little bit about what happened and what it means for this conversation about apprenticeships?
Yeah, so the Trump administration has really been set on um, shrinking the size of government, especially the Department of Education. Wherever you stand on that is fine, but I think it has a direct implication for how we think about earn and learn programs. Is that if we look back in terms of all the federal reorganizations. Take DHS when I was a young guy with less gray hair. We brought 22 agencies together. It took decades for them to reorganize, for those agencies to work together to make sure that all the levers and gears were working out right. And now we're making that same mistake over again. We're just shifting all the priorities of the Department of Education and kind of slotting them in a square peg in a round hole by putting them over at the Department of Labor. And when I think what we ought to be doing is saying, hey, we know we have evidence that apprenticeships really work. They work for companies and they work for workers. And we ought to be investing more in that in terms of modernizing the system, making it easier to start apprenticeships, putting more intermediaries on the street to help companies understand how to get those apprenticeships started and supporting them with a little bit of federal dollars as we see our competitors like the UK and Switzerland and Germany really having robust systems that really work because they invest a couple of billion in apprenticeships versus our $300 million. So it's really about kind of shifting resources towards something that is evidence based and we know is going to be helping folks get into good work and helping businesses at the same time.
Zach, final couple questions I would really hone in on. If you were sitting down talking with members of Congress, members of the current administration in Washington, we'll start there and then we'll go to the state level. But if you were to tell them, here's the one thing you should be doing when it comes to apprenticeships, either if they're saying, well, how much we invest in 4-year degrees versus apprenticeships, is that a good place to focus? So either that or just what would you say is this is the most important thing that we should do at the federal level tomorrow that is going to help fix this imbalance and strengthen apprenticeships as a tool of opportunity? What's the one big thing you'd say to folks on the federal level?
Well, I think we can start one by by making it easier for veterans to actually enter apprenticeships. From some analysis that I've done, is that a lot of companies really like hiring veterans. They're ready to do it. Some of them are actually hiring veterans in apprenticeships, but they need more incentives to do it. Today, the GI Bill actually creates a large disparity in offering $200,000 more if you decide to go into higher education, into going and getting that French lit degree at Brown versus going into a plumbing apprenticeship. Now, I think that is creating a second class system for those that choose the trades. And we can reform that right away. The second thing that I would do is to take a look at our 1937 National Apprenticeship Act, and that it requires a lot of reforms if we're going to be competitive in every industry from AI to healthcare. And that requires a real reform to invest in states. It requires a real investment into intermediaries. And it also requires us to think differently about how we help get people from secondary education out of high school. And for those folks that want to go right into their career, that we create a smooth pathway. But that reform is long overdue. It's 85 years old. The language that we have there is about as whiz bang as indoor plumbing was at the time. And we just need a larger, more robust system if we're ever going to compete on a greater level.
Zach, final question for you. Let's bring it down to the state level. You're talking to a governor, to legislative leadership. State legislatures are gearing up for the legislative sessions in 2026. And if they're thinking about this and they think, hey, we heard the conversation, we're very intrigued. What should we do? Tell us the bill to run. Tell us what to do as a state to try and take a real step forward here. What's the one thing they should focus on first in 2026?
Yeah, I think first we're seeing a lot of states that are doing really well with a pay for performance model or pay for apprenticeship. So California, Iowa, Maryland are all leading in these new initiatives to actually invest in the startup of an apprenticeship program, investing 3 to 4 thousand in an intermediary and 3 to 4 thousand in that employer that hires an apprentice. And that can really kick open the door to having great conversations about the value of apprenticeships with employers that have a need for talent today. So I would say support that effort around pay for apprentice and support those intermediaries that are engaged at the local level in your state, that know your employers, that know what they need, that have those connections to secondary education. Secondly, embedding youth apprenticeship and career and technical education into apprenticeships, really creating that pathway from high school to employment. And not just employment, but actually into real careers. These are ways that we've seen Iowa really succeed in the way that they design apprenticeship programs at the high school level for local employers. It's really important to think about how we invest in our rural communities. And this apprenticeship and youth apprenticeship is a great way to really think about how we offer real opportunities in our rural communities, like the place where I live, that could use a little bit more support to ensure that our young people don't just grow up and go off to the city. They have opportunities to grow families at home. And then the third thing is to focus on where you're short workers, whether that's in tech, healthcare, education, or the trades. Let's invest in those occupations that we need to fill today and ensure that those are incentivized at the state and local level.
Thanks for watching that clip of Defending Ideas. For the full conversation, click the link in the description and make sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your shows.